Bitcoin's up a lot more than the S&P, but that's not the point. One Bitcoin's still worth one Bitcoin. What's happened is not that Bitcoin got better. It's always been good. Since this is the crazy thing.
Hey guys, welcome back to Everyday Finance. In this video, Mark Yusko discuss about Bitcoin. Mark Yusko says, the Bitcoin network, as well as the value of any right now, the network can be defined. We can create a Metcalfe's law curve and define it, the value of Bitcoin. And when I mentioned that in 2000, I believe it was 2017 or such 18, I believe it was in 2018. What was the point of the fair value being 1112K? And if we fell to 8, then we eventually fell to 6, and then we fell to 3, so I was ahead of you. I realize it's a euphemism for bad, but I didn't say purchase it all at once. I said buy it in installments. It was interesting, I was back on CNBC at 8, and then buy more at 6, and then real 5th of December 2018. And we achieved the ultimate low of 31.67, and the host, she's a nice young woman. She's like, well, you know, you said we should buy it, and you should. In fact, we released the Morgan Creek digital edition yesterday. Anyone around the world can place a buffet-style bet on the other side of the challenge. Each fund has a $1 million bet. We'll donate $500,000 to charity Bitcoin. Take the SP, we actually had one man who was eager to take it, and his son, who manages a large asset management firm, likes Dad. No way, no how, because we're supposed to win. It would be terrible if we lost. So no, we're not doing it, and we didn't do it, but no one accepted it, which is a good thing because, as you know, Bitcoin has risen significantly more than the SP at this moment. But that is not the goal. One Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. What occurred is that Bitcoin did not get better. It's always been good from the day this is. The crazy thing was released. Vietnam was not invented on that day in January of 2009, as previously said. Been a long time in the making, and lots of things Mark Yusko discussed, so please watch the video to end, and like, share, subscribe our channel Everyday Finance. Thanks.
Amazing about it is, while we were on the show, I think it had fallen from like 10 grand to 8 grand. And I'm only on the show for like 6 minutes. So it was a super dump. And I don't know the exact numbers, but it did hit 8 grand while we were there. And she said, well, what should we do? And I said, buy it. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, you'd always say it. You'd always say, yeah, I would. Buy it today, buy it tomorrow, buy it next week, buy it next month. I don't mean buy it all right now. That's not the point. And it was funny because it took a long time for her and others at CNBC to kind of come around. I mean, Joe's come all the way, but it was interesting because the point was, look, it's a diversifying asset. It's uncorrelated to stocks and bonds. It actually improves the Sharpe ratio of your overall portfolio when you add it, but not if you try to time it and add it all at once. It's about dollar cost averaging. And what I say all the time is the price, I steal this line from John Burbank, famous legendary hedge fund manager and friend of mine, is price is a liar. The price of Bitcoin is not the value of Bitcoin. The value of the Bitcoin network, which is the largest, most secure computing network in the history of mankind. And look, I'm prone to hyperbole, but that's not hyperbole. It's 1,500 times more powerful than the CERN supercomputer, which is the next most powerful computer. And he says, well, what about quantum? Quantum won't be close to the power of the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin network. And that value of any network is definable, right? We can do a Metcalfe's law curve and we can define the value of Bitcoin. And back when I said that in 2000, I think it was 2017 or 18, I think it was 2018. What the point was that the fair value was 11, 12K. And if we fell to 8, and eventually we fell to 6, right? And then we fell to 3. So I was early, euphemism for wrong, but I didn't say buy it all at once. I said buy it at 8 and then buy more at 6, and then and in fact, it was funny. I was back on CNBC December 5th, 2018, and we hit 31.67, right? The absolute low. And Ken, the host, she's a nice young woman. She's like, well, you said we should buy it. Yeah, and you should. In fact, yesterday we issued the Morgan Creek Digital Challenge, right? A Buffett-style bet. Anyone in the world, take the other side, $1 million bet, each fund half, $1 million to charity. We'll take Bitcoin, you take the S&P. Crickets. Crickets. We actually had one guy who was willing to take it. And his son, he runs a big asset management firm. And his son was like, Dad, no way, no way. No, because if we win, we're supposed to win. If we lose, it's horrible. So no, we're not doing it. And we didn't do it. But nobody took it. And it's a good thing because, from that point, Bitcoin's up a lot more than the S&P. But that's not the point. One Bitcoin's still worth one Bitcoin. What's happened is not that Bitcoin got better. It's always been good. Since the day, this is the crazy thing, since the day it was invented. Now, it actually wasn't invented on that day in January in 2009. Right? It had been worked on for a long time before. It's not a coincidence that it was released on that day, right? Right around the time of the chancellor announcing the second bailout for banks, which is the first image on the blockchain. That's not a coincidence, but it's always been great. It's been a better form of money because triple entry accounting is the future. And all these people say, oh, it's going to zero. Peter Schiff and Nouriel and all these guys, like, are you joking? I mean, literally name a time when a technological advance went back in the bottle. Air travel, like railroads, electricity. I've been watching the prequels to Yellowstone, and they're brutal, by the way. I mean, brutal. The body counts are huge, and the gratuitous violence and stuff. And the one I'm watching now, 1923, I have to skip over the whole Catholic Church thing. As a good Catholic, I just can't even watch. I mean, I know we were horrible back then, but I can't even watch that segment. But there's this thing about they're pitching electricity's coming, and there are going to be these machines that do all these things. And it's funny because they get campy, and they say things like, well, then what are we going to do? Like, will we just sit around and do nothing? And like, yeah, that's what we're talking about with AI and all this stuff. And like, no, here's the thing. The most jobs in the history of mankind have been destroyed by technology over the last couple thousand years, right? But we also have the most jobs in the history of mankind today. True fact. And AI is going to destroy a lot of jobs, but it will create more than it destroys. And then look, yes, it's funny. I went back and we watched the Mission Impossible, the latest one. And, it's this whole thing about this sentient AI, and that you had to go to everything digital, analog, and you had to get off the grid, and they were typing stuff out to preserve it because the AI was going to chew up everything. Yeah, I guess that could happen. But at the end of the day, we'll survive it, and we'll thrive, and we'll create lots of new stuff. But the thing we won't create is better money. This is it. Bitcoin is better money, and it's replacing the only money that's ever existed in the history of our world, right? Which is gold. 5,000 years. 5,000 years, Lark. 5,000 years. A single ounce buys a fine person's suit. The perfect store of value. From Cleopatra to a suit of armor, right? I was just in Spain and saw these big giant suits of armor in Seville, which was the center of the universe, and the conquistadors came over and discovered the new world. Quick fact that I didn't even think about, didn't know. Horse, pigs, cows, chickens, none of them were in the Americas until the Spanish and the Portuguese came over here and settled. Tomato and potato, which we think of Irish and Italian, nope, South American. And it's just
the Columbia Exchange.
Yeah, the Columbia Exchange. And the globalization thing is real and will be real, but money Because this is another thing I learned. So for years, I had talked about money as an asset that exists in the absence of a liability. And there's only been one in the history of the world, and that's gold. We tried a couple other things, but gold is really the one. Everything else on top of it, right? Gold is the base layer of money, and everything on top of it is debt or currency. We use it as a medium of exchange, but it's not money. It's a currency, and it's backed by debt. Gold is an asset that exists in the absence of a liability. And that gold was at the root of money and at the root of discovery of banking. And I always used to give the Medicis credit, but there was a little piece of the story that I just learned about on this vacation to Portugal. So I'd always told the story that the Medicis, 800 years ago, borrowed, AKA stole, right? Picasso said, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Stole this idea from these monks to do fractional reserve banking. And they and the Rothschilds and the Morgans have run that, organization for all these years. Well, they said, no. Those monks were the Knights Templar, the Order of Christ, here in Portugal. And the reason is they had all the gold from all the other knights who would go off on their expeditions, and some of them didn't come back. Like, what should we do with all this gold? Hey, let's lend it to other people who want to go do something, and we'll charge interest. And they invented fractional reserve banking. And then the Medicis borrowed it and created dual entry accounting. Because here's the crazy thing. In the olden days, I lent you money, right? And I wrote down in the book, my book, I was the money lender. I wrote down in my book, Lark owes me $100. And you come back to pay me, or Florence back then, and you come back to pay me 110. But I'm an unscrupulous guy, Lark, and I wrote down 200. And you're like, no, I only borrowed 100. It says right here in the book. You had to trust me, and I'm just not worth your trust. So you were out of luck. So the Medici said, no. Lark, you keep a book. Mark, you keep a book, and we, the benevolent Medicis, for a small fee, will make sure that the books match. But here's the problem. The Medicis were kind of dicey, and I would go to them and say, you know what? I'm going to change my book to 200. I'll give you half. So Lark pays 200, you get 50, I make 150. Done. Awesome. So I could cook the books. And that had been going on for years, right? Here's a crazy stat. The